Seattle as a top tourism and a top LGBTQ tourism destination from number 16, ranked in the nation, to number 6. We were very, very proud of what we were able to accomplish. So, as with all of our panel discussions, I'm going to introduce the panel first, and then I'm going to introduce our moderator. I am going to get you to hold your applause until we can give a big round to the whole team. So, our first panelist, Dean Nelson, our friend and Canadian neighbor to the north. I'm not sure how I was going with that. Any problems getting to the border? Good. Apparently we're not letting anybody in anymore. Dean, who has 11 years experience in LGBT travel and tourism as the producer of world-class events including Whistler Pride and Ski Festival, Pride House at the Olympic Games, very exciting, and the 2014 FIFA Women's World Cup Pride House. Welcome. Tom Norwalk, President and CEO of Visit Seattle, the non-profit marketing organization that promotes Seattle as a destination for international and domestic leisure travel, meetings, and conventions. Tim Robinson, who I just recently met, Senior Director of Marketing and Communications at Visit Spokane, the official destination marketing organization for Spokane County, Washington. Welcome. And our moderator today is Karen Olson. Karen is the Chief Marketing Officer at the Space Needle and Chihuly Garden and Glass. And we have a very special extra thank you because Karen and her team provided the tickets to the Space Needle and the tickets to the Chihuly Glass Garden and Glass Museum at the Seattle Center. And before I let it go, Mark Avery Jones, I believe, is here. Thank you for the tickets. The moderator, who was with the Seattle Center. Exactly.
Great. Thank you for inviting us here today. We've heard it's been a wonderful evening, day. We have a great panel here. It's a very timely topic. So we'll have a good discussion. We'll also be concise because we know it's between us and happy hour. So we'll make every word count. This is about, hello? This topic is about tourism, and for us, we're all in the tourism industry, and that represents one of the oldest and strongest and most resilient industries globally on the planet. Tourism is all about building bridges, opening doors, welcoming people, sharing cultures, creating space between divides. I mean, it is the bridging the gap for people on the planet for decades. It's not about walls or bans. And so this administration specifically is putting a lot of challenges in front of tourism in general, specifically tourism for welcoming visitors to our country, from other countries, welcoming visitors from other cultures, welcoming LGBT visitors, putting hostel and hospitality. And that's a front to what all we do. And so this topic is about how we address some of the things that are happening within this administration and how we see us going forward for the next 4 years, or hopefully it's a shorter duration, someone in office. So to open it up, we have some questions here, and we'll have some videos and slides, and then we can open up for questions at the end. If anyone has a question in the middle, please hop up. It'll be pretty informal. Then first we're going to talk broadly. So we're talking about international tourism, and specifically the impact of the travel bans on international tourism. To start it off, Tom has a short video from Visit Seattle that we'd like to play, and then kick off this conversation.
Right.
It's going to be a really good video.
It's not quite that short.
It's about a pylon. A single pylon.
after the first travel ban was announced in January. And this was a little love letter from our city, really after our mayor and governor so eloquently started to defend and challenge the travel ban, but about the DNA of our city, that we are welcome to all. So this is what we did. We wanted to do something that we felt was reflective of our city and kind of the DNA of our city that's always been here, and never more than the last 8 to 10 years as we've taken a number of stands. And there were a lot of organizations that chimed in right away about the travel ban, about the effects that it could have, and we felt this was a way we could send it around the world to our representatives, 6 countries around the world, Asia and Europe. And we've had incredibly great response, and I think it has cost us a little bit. We've lost a couple of members who are membership-based organizations that didn't agree with us taking a stand like this, but we felt it was important enough and it reflected who we are that we will definitely stand up. So there's a lot at stake for all of us, but especially Seattle, that is so trade and internationally, globally dependent. For us as a city, from a tourism perspective, the international business is our fastest growing segment. And it's really 10 to 12% of our total tourism business coming in. A chunk of that coming from Canada, thank you very much. Certainly Mexico, but overseas countries, the travelers stay longer, they spend more money, and it is what is really propelling us as a city. So we're growing year over year. The last time the ratings came out, our international growth was 33% over the previous year, which was the highest in the country. So a lot of great things happening for us from an international standpoint. So a travel ban in any form is dangerous. We've never felt really the security reasons to do it made a lot of sense. I still don't think they really do. There's tremendous scrutiny and vetting that takes place around the world, as I think we're all coming to learn, which has been a great thing. And I don't think this, even this version 2, really satisfies that any differently. But we would never argue with the necessity for security, but we think that is built into what our policies are right now. So we've got a lot at stake. We are a city that's doing a tremendous amount of conventions and meetings, and just about 20% of attendees that come to our meetings are international overseas attendees. Medical, technology, aerospace, engineers, doctors, scientists that have traveled globally, that is at stake. And we're fortunate so far we have not had really any fall off or any forward-looking concern about numbers dropping. But as we always say, travel is incredibly fragile. Travel can change overnight for any number of reasons. And so we jumped in quickly to try to defend what we're doing.
Thanks, Tom. Before we go to Canada, stay in Washington State. Tim, for Visit Spokane, do you have the same impact for international tourism and has this ban?
We do get a lot of international tourists in Spokane from Canada. Is our primary. And
Thanks, Tim.
I'm going to say it's about 8% or so, 5 to 8%, and our market is Canadian market is Edmonton and Calgary. Folks come down from there to visit Spokane because it's so much warmer and the golf fees are so much cheaper, and there's good shopping there. But we don't have the same challenges that Tom faces and that Seattle faces because he mentioned meetings and conventions and the great percentage they get from international. Well, Seattle is, in the meetings and convention world, is considered a tier 1 city. It's where great big conventions and meetings will look. They need the space that Tom can provide. They need the amenities that Seattle can provide, the hotel rooms. Spokane is a tier 2, maybe tier 3, tier 2, we say tier 3 city. And so we don't go after the same meetings and conventions that will have international members coming. So we don't face that challenge. I don't know if you can possibly show live websites up on there. If you can, I just wanted to mention, it's something I should have thought of earlier, is that similar to what Tom and his team did in response to the travel ban, we didn't make a video, but those of you who have websites, you know, you have your home page and you have your big picture called your hero slider picture, and we have a few of those, and we wanted to try and make one for visitspokane.com. We just wanted to put a subtle one up there, letting folks know that you are welcome in our city, and the verbiage, we've added around a few ideas, and it's very, very subtle, because we didn't want to make a political statement, and Tom mentioned losing a couple of members. Ours is also a member-based organization. We're, private nonprofits. We do get lodging tax dollars, but we also get a significant portion of our budgets from our members, and we want to represent them well. And you always have to take into account, of course, your actions in terms of the way it may be perceived by your members. So that's why we went with the subtlety of an image that was just a beautiful image of Spokane. It's our backyard is called Riverfront Park. It's a 100-acre park right in downtown, and just the verbiage was something to the effect of we want to be warm and welcoming. So that's kind of where we stand, and we don't want to see, our fingers crossed along with everybody else that there isn't a terrible impact from, if there is a travel ban that ends up taking hold. I was looking at some numbers earlier. Since the inauguration, searches for flights to the U.S. have gone down in 102 out of 133 countries worldwide. A big exception to that is Russia. Searches for flights to the U.S. have gone up 60% since inauguration. So there it is right there. Just a pretty little homepage, Spring in Spokane, warmly welcoming the world this season. So I think that's lovely.
Thanks, Tim. So, Dean, so there's a lot of uncertainty in the U.S. and will a travel ban, make it through the courts or not? But that actually has impacted Canada. Can you speak about that, Canada tourism?
Yeah, Canada's booming. It's actually quite. I know it crashed our website for Canadian immigration. Officially, with Tourism Whistler, they aren't acknowledging the political point of view. The main message that they're getting out there is that we're a safe and inclusive destination, and we're already seeing a lot of meetings and conventions re-looking at the U.S. And coming to Canada instead, which is great for us, not so good for the U.S. And it's primarily just because the conference organizers can't guarantee that 100% of their attendees will make it through. So if we go to a couple of my slides, do you mind if I jump there? So, this is just a couple slides from Travelgate Canada. It's talking about the Canadian travel market in general. So it's worth $8.5 billion annually. That's what our Canadian consumers spend within Canada. $5,200 average spend per person per year. And the average gay consumer will do about 4 to 5 trips per year. And 49% spend travels within Canada. If we go to the next slide. We invest almost 20 nights at a hotel. So we like to travel and stay away. We take 5.3 trips or flights. 65% indicated that they're foodies. So dining out is really important for a gay traveler. And 53% will shop on vacation. One of our favorite shopping destinations is here in the US because we have some great prices. Not so good right now with the US dollar being so strong. And 40% will take in arts and culture, so going to the Seattle Space Needle and taking in the Chihuahuas is really fun. If we go to the next one, for Tourism Whistler's marketing, their core markets, of course, is Washington and California, so we're really focused on bringing those consumers up to Canada and playing up the US exchange. So right now Canada's on sale, 40% off almost. So we had this great joke back in the 90s. What would you get with 2 pesos and $1? North America. We had Mexico, Canada, or the 2 pesos. Focused on lifestyle, desire to travel to Whistler, and messaging will avoid any political opinions of the US. Next slide. For Tourism Whistler, they aren't doing any print advertising, so I'm sort of jumping around a little bit, but they're focused, and just like Gay Whistler with Whistler Pride, we're more focused on blogs, websites, social media. Facebook is really huge for us. Sharing content, that kind of stuff, rather than buying print ads, which we don't find as effective anymore. And then me as Gay Whistler, they're leveraging our relationship as the Gay DMO, Destination Marketing Organization, to get that message out there, and we'll partner with people like the $3 Bill Festival here in Seattle and give away prizes and just raise awareness that way. The next slide. So this is what we're seeing in Canada. These are some of the headlines that is quite concerning for America. So Canadians blocked by US customs after reading his profile on a gay hookup site, which was Grindr. He was deemed to be a sex trade worker because he had too many provocative messages on his profile. And that sent shockwaves through the gay community in Canada, where we're going, do we really want to go to America now? Because we don't want to hand over our phone, and this one guest, he's basically banned from America for life until it's changed. We have another one, Hamilton Church Group volunteers tonight entry into the US because they were deemed to be stealing American jobs. If we go to the next slide, Girl Guides of Canada have canceled all trips to the United States, and Canadian school groups have also canceled all cross-border trips. So this is a big concern for Washington State, where we get a lot of our school groups coming over. We'll go to the next slide. What's that? So travel to the US, just having that non-inclusive messaging is a big deal right now. And let's see what else is up there. We can go to Whistler Pride Consumer quickly. And just gives you an idea. Next slide. So our consumer is 45 years old, lives in Vancouver, stays 5.3 nights in the resort, skis 4.4 days, and travels 4 times, or with 4 more people. And this year's festival, our economic impact was about $7.4 million in that 1 week. I think we'll just go to the next slide. Here's something that's kind of interesting. 38% of our total attendees are from America. When we did our festival survey, 35% of our attendees were unsure if they would be coming to America this coming year. 15% said they've canceled all trips to the United States. So in total, you have 50% of our attendees that are saying, we're not really sure that we'll go to the US. We specifically asked if they're going to Miami for the World Out Games, and 25% said we were, but we're going to hold off and go to Paris instead in the following years.
Can I just say that I think Dean makes a great point, that our best friends north of the border, if they're thinking this, and the uncertainty of getting across the border or how they'll be treated, imagine how different parts of the world would even amplify that. And I think that's what's frightening about the uncertainty of a travel ban, when and if it's going to happen, and how will I be treated if I can get in. So,
And speaking of borders, I just wanted to mention that everything that's going on has led to an increase in Mexico travelers bypassing the United States, where they might go and going to Canada. Canada is getting more Mexican travelers now because of what's going on.
Yeah, on those, and specifically going back to kind of those headlines, so with that kind of fear and uncertainty, oh, no, good question. But in terms of how do we market it and make the U.S., make Seattle, Spokane, be known to be welcoming, we are safe, we are welcoming all visitors, how do you counter that? How do you market that we are an inclusive, welcoming place to visit?
we've had to do a couple of things. One, the video was our first response that we're using that all the time for international reps. We have 6 countries around the world where they're using that on websites, they're sending that to media, and we're trying to just use that message. Rob Hampton, my colleague over in the corner, and a proud GSBA board member, runs our sales and services team, and we've had to send to many groups who are looking at Seattle, worried about attendance, worried about where my international attendees come, some fact sheets, really using some great quotes from the mayor, using some of the history of things we've done in the city that have always been welcoming and warm. So it's not a message we're trying to create just because there's an issue. It really is who we are. And so far we've had great success, and we've turned some things around from the standpoint of groups that are nervous about coming, that they do see that this is our city. So,
Tim, and I think we have a question of Jerome.
Well, we don't have the same challenges that Visit Seattle does, because they have their offices around the world, and they have consistently marketed to international travelers. That's something that Spokane, I've worked at Visit Spokane for 4 years, lived in Spokane for 6 years. Spokane previously, is my understanding, did some marketing to German tourists, to that big show that's held in ITB in Germany. But that ceased until this year, and we decided to spend a small part of our budget to entice Chinese visitors, because the Chinese travel market is very robust. So we are once again getting into that market, and we'll certainly meet any challenges and try to provide the good answers if we do encounter them. But thus far, we haven't seen anything.
and we're checking the sentiment around the world through our reps every couple of weeks with calls, and they're checking with media, they're checking with travel buyers in those countries, and it's a concern for sure, but we don't think going to be a big impact right now for us.
We can go to a question, and then we'll come back here.
Yeah, well, it's not a question, it's a comment.
Yeah, I'm Bruce Bacon. The European Union is retaliating. They are going to go do away with no visas required for American travelers. So this has gotten very big. Maybe people aren't following that, but they are really indignant about people from Europe being stopped at our border and being put through all these headaches, hours of detention, endless questions. A celebrated case from Australia, a woman who publishes children's books, has published 114 books. She's the most esteemed author in Australia. Questioned for 10 hours. It was the 100th time she's come to the United States. So Europe is going to retaliate. And you think it's going to be complicated to get visas for 10 countries. Excuse me. This is really turning into a big-time international war. And notwithstanding the problems with Canada, that may be the minimal problem, because the majority of Americans go to Europe, not necessarily Canada, for the favors of Paris and Vienna and on down the list vacation. So this is going to be really, really amazingly strange as it continues. That's all.
I would say, and George brings up a good point, 60% of America's international overseas visitors come in through the Visa Waiver Program, which is a gigantic economic engine for our nation. I think we have 40 million overseas visitors to the USA, and 60% of those go through visa waiver. So if countries start to renege or change or pull, if our country says the visa waiver program isn't strong enough, every major destination in America will feel that, sadly.
And then I want to also talk about marketing and being welcome to specific LGBT travelers. I know that, Tim, you said you had some slides about that. Do you want to show the slides and then we'll talk?
Sure. The first slide is just, you can see I'm in marketing because my name is on top. But then beyond that, I just wanted to show you on our website, we have a mammoth website that we're actually redoing right now. And one of the pages is an LGBT page. I just took a screenshot of it just to show you that. And we do take some imagery and around the time of our Pride Festival, and we'll make it one of our hero sliders. I also just wanted to show you, I think Tom and pretty much every DMO, Destination Marketing Organization, or CVB, Convention and Visitor Bureau like we are, they do a annual visitor guide every year. Ours is about 60 pages. This is our 2016-17 version. And it's a big undertaking. It takes a long time. We have a publishing group out of Arizona that works on it with us. And so I want to show you on the next slide that when we get to the point of deciding what stories are going to be in our guide and fill those 60 pages, writers are assigned to write those, not in-house, but professional writers are hired. Then we get to the design stage and we go through a photo swap session where the Visit Spokane marketing team sits down with the magazine maker and we decide, well, change this and change that, and please adjust this one. And you might see right up, the second bullet point says the scene. Swap out Pride Parade with 9 Bar. And if you switch the page, we have a little section called Girlfriends Getaways and Guys Getaway, Family Getaway, LGBT Getaway. So that's going to be in this year's Visitor's Guide. And when we got to the part about what it looks like, here's what the designer gave us. And we said, well, that's a good picture, but that's showing the Pride Festival. How about if we do something that's just a little more, that anybody can do? So if you switch to the next slide, you can see we've replaced it with, that's a bar called 9 Bar, which is historically a gay bar in Spokane, but, like so many great establishments, it's just a bar. And it's where people go to have a good time. And we just felt like that was a good representative picture to show that it's just a wonderful place for any demographic to come along. Marvo is sitting here in the front, and Marvo is with the Inland Northwest Business Alliance, the gay chamber in Spokane. We work with Marvo and talk to him, and he helped inform me a lot as we were putting this article together for the LGBT Getaway. And one of the interesting things I learned was, I kept saying, Marvel, we want to feature gay-friendly this or gay-friendly that. And Marvel said, well, Tim, let me just refine that a little bit. It's not so much gay-friendly. LGBT-owned is really important. That's a really good thing because folks want to support that. And so we made sure that we went in that direction and included restaurants and establishments that were LGBT-owned. So we're constantly refining and constantly trying to make it a little bit better and a little bit more inclusive. But like this whole conversation we've had, travel is all about hospitality. That is the backbone of what we all do, which is saying, we don't care who you are, come on, we'd love to have you, we want to host you. And that's what we work hard to do every day with our social media. We have a lot of followers and we're constantly putting out messages that are saying, come on to Spokane, give us a shot, and now we're getting lucky that the state might finally get a state tourism department again. We're the only state in the United States that does not have a state tourism office. And, Visit Seattle and Visit Spokane, our communities manage to keep growing and more visitors are spending. But there are smaller cities and smaller destinations around the state that aren't so lucky because they don't have anybody waving the flag saying, come to the state of Washington, and then those smaller places can piggyback on that and say, and now that you're here, come to our small town, have a great weekend here.
Yeah, the budget question is good. I want to come back to that. But on this one, so Tom, in terms of how do you market specific to LGBT travelers? I know Visit Seattle has done a lot over the past few years. What are some of those campaigns?
We've come really a long way in 10 years, and increased funding certainly helps. I know the great debate that still is out there is, should you be doing something very specifically that is LGBT in nature, or does your website, does your city, do the partners you have and the members you have, isn't it really appropriate for all visitors, all travelers? And you don't need to be necessarily that specific. Campaigns that we've done, from the Marry Me in Seattle campaign in 2012, which was gigantic, and when the referendum was passed for same-sex marriage, we did a national, really national contest and giveaway for 4 weddings to take place in Seattle. And our mayor was gracious, performed the first wedding, and it was really then other states came in and it wasn't quite as unique anymore. And since then, we've really done more advertising through AGRE, through here, through the publications on the website, Museum Month, Taste Washington Wine Month. We've used those outlets for a lot of our normal either banner ads or digital ads, just as a part of our regular media buys. So they are not necessarily specific in the sense of you are welcome here, but they were reflective, I think, of our inclusion in the city in general. So it's been very successful.
Is there anything new with the current administration? There's a lot of fear and uncertainty. On travel and bans and there's fear and uncertainty all over. Is there any now specific messages about safety, or is there specific messages now that we can convey that you will be welcome and safe? And is there, in the new administration, are there new fears that we have to address, and if so, how are we addressing those?
Well, I know there are new fears, and I think there's been some overreaction or overreaching by law enforcement or border protection, border patrol. I had heard just a story yesterday of a traffic stop on a freeway, and one of the passengers in the car was of Mexican origin, and the state trooper kind of took that upon themselves and to try to check about did they have appropriate papers to be in the state of Washington, which is really not their deal, and it turned into a 2 or 3 hour ordeal. And I think that's what we need to be fearful of, and I don't know if that's anything we can necessarily, other than voice a concern. And this was a conversation yesterday with the Mexican Consul General, and I think there's heightened awareness about that. But there's no real message other than I think our city does a great job of trying to be welcoming all the time. I do worry, though, about overreaching policies at the federal level, if it's airport, if it's TSA, or if it's patrol.
And Dean, when you were saying that, how there's on the service people who were going to visit the United States are deciding not to, were there specific fears that they mentioned?
Yeah, so coming into visiting Seattle is not the issue. It's arriving at the border and having that arrival experience where an individual now feels entitled that his opinion, not necessarily the law, but his opinion can be placed on you where, I don't like the color, or you look too gay, so I don't like gays, and the commander-in-chief says it's okay for me to have that opinion now because number 45 is all God. And so I'm going to call him on that, and I'm going to say, no, you can't come into the country because I don't want you here. That's what the real issue is. And for the CBBs, I don't know what the solution is, because you have to be very, very strong with Border Patrol and just say, hey, this is hurting our economy. We're losing group business now. We're losing conventions. I think that's the bigger concern. And then the southern states where they're legalizing open discrimination, well, that's another completely different thing, right?
I think it's easy to dwell on the negative were to focus on one part of the entire pie. For example, you talk about the current administration and the policies it's trying to push through. Well, meanwhile, as Dean mentioned, the U.S. dollar is very strong. That is having an impact on travel. It has nothing to do with the current administration, and I'm not an apologist, believe me. But you have to, we're talking about negatives, but you know what? There's a whole lot of positive in the tourism and travel industry. There's a whole lot of positive in this room. So you have to answer some of these questions with the facts. You just have to talk about the good that does exist and not just think, how do we get rid of that bad? You have to talk about the good. Tiny little example is The Guardian is a big website, big newspaper in England. They have a big U.S. presence on their website. And a writer from Spokane, he moved away, went to New York, NYU. He lives in Paris now. He's got quite a resume. He writes for the New York Times and the Paris Review and the New Yorker. And 3 days ago, he wrote an article for Guardian US about the Spokane's Gonzaga basketball. Gonzaga, for those of you who don't know, is the best college basketball team. And they were ranked #1 for a lot of this year, and they're one of the top seeds in the NCAA tournament right now. So this young man who wrote the article took it upon himself to juxtapose the success of the team with the dilapidation of the city, with how bad things are in Spokane, with how the crime rate is so high in Spokane. So there's one little fact that we looked at and said, well, he kind of cherry-picked and arrived at this figure of crime. So it was answered with facts. By the way, Visit Spokane spearheaded an effort. The writer's name is Cody. We did yesterday a social media campaign that says hashtag come home Cody. Cody, come home. Anyway, we went around and took pictures of various places in Spokane in front of some of our iconic images and posted it. And this thing went viral. And today, The Guardian wrote an apology article, 500 words, where they said, you know, we've got some of our facts wrong on that. And Cody, the writer, also came out with his own mea culpa today. So you can answer the negative with the positive is what my suggestion is.
To follow up on that point and to your earlier point about budgets. So with budgets, we don't have a state-funded budget. Maybe in Washington State, I'm not sure about in British Columbia, and it's pulled a lot from just the hotels, the lodging taxes, and so it's and working with existing businesses. So with limited funds and these kind of larger issues with walls and borders, how do we effectively make change? I mean, is it policy? Is it communication? Is it marketing? How are we looking at limited resources to make impact for our businesses?
I think part of it is it's definitely policy, it's advocacy, it's partnerships and alliances. It's like GSBA and Visit Seattle for 10, 11 years together, doing things together to champion the very nature of travel and tourism. 10 years ago, research was done in Washington, D.C. that showed that most people viewed travel and tourism as frivolous and as non-essential, that travel really wasn't that important. And I think that happens all the time when you look at travel as one of the first things to be cut or used punitively in any nature, in any type of business or any type of situation. So I think alliances, advocacy, and actually our travel industry was slow, really, I think, to be politically engaged and spending time in Olympia, which many of us never did because many of the hoteliers are so busy running hotels or in the industry, we never really spent the time in Olympia. And much of tourism has been funded by those busy hoteliers that just decided we'll pay for it ourselves. We don't need help from the government. So, and that's all changing now. We've had to become much more astute, I would say.
Dean or Tim?
Well, there's a bill right now in the Washington State Legislature that is still alive. It is designed to create a statewide marketing organization to promote travel and tourism. Since 2011, the state of Washington has not had that office. Again, the only one in the United States. When that happened, I remember the New York Times had an article on its front page that showed signs saying "Come to Montana." That those were popping up all over Seattle because they saw an opportunity with this state saying, "Nope, we're not going to spend any more money on travel and tourism." That's not good, and there has been an effort year after year to try and mount this, what now looks like it's this close to reality, a private, nonprofit, not state-run organization that will be funded by retail, a percentage of retail sales from the rental car industry, restaurants, and hotels, I believe. And we've been working with those industries for years, and they are voluntarily coming in. So if this passes, and it's part of the budget necessary, I believe is the terminology, it's going to be in there till the end, and if the budget passes, it'll happen, and we will have a $2.5 million a year state tourism office. I use state loosely. It's not a state office, but there's going to be some funding of it that we will have to pay the Department of Treasury. $2.5 million a year. You compare that with the $6 million a year that the state of Idaho spends on tourism marketing. $6 million in 1 year, 2.5 for us. Our neighbors spend from $6 to $50 million a year, and Washington is just kickstarting this thing with a $5 million over 2 years budget. So starting small, but very hopeful that it's going to happen.
Our Canadian friends have always understood tourism a lot better. I think British Columbia is 45 or 50 million a year as a province.
Yeah.
California now over 100 million. Oregon in the 30s. And then, as Tim said, Wyoming, Montana, the Dakotas, all spending millions in tourism marketing money. So
Tourism Montreal spends $100 million a year. Just Tourism Montreal.
And there's a reason. Obviously, they do. I mean, I don't. It's the 9th biggest industry in the United States. It's the 4th biggest industry in the state of Washington. And we were talking earlier, and too many people might think it's about saying, come to our beach and throw out a towel and have a Mai Tai, or come to our city and go rafting, or come to our town and see a play. Well, it's so much deeper than that. And the mayor was up here at lunch, and he looked out and thanked all of you for coming and said thanks for spending your taxes in our city, because that's one of the main reasons CVBs exist, is because we want to, our mission is to promote economic development and economic impact in our cities. And so when a group comes to visit to Seattle to hold its convention, you are just importing taxpayers right there. They are spending not just room tax dollars, but when they go down to buy a toothbrush that they forgot at home, they're spending a little bit of retail tax. The taxes are very, very important in this.
I think Rob's team did such a great job last month in February, a record year in our city convention center. 3 major groups, mostly international type groups. 3 groups spent over $25 million during the month of February of economic impact. So that's employment, that's everything from retail sales, attractions, nonprofits, everything.
The other thing that happens with travel and tourism is your CEO comes to your city and goes, wow, I love Seattle. I'm moving headquarters here because of what's happening in his city that he's not happy with. And just like, well, we're moving to Seattle. Vancouver, we've received so many new tech companies because they were having issues for their employees that they did not feel that they could win that battle. So let's move operations up to Vancouver where it's more inclusive.
Tim mentioned the lunch at the Mayor earlier, so that was left coast economic impact. Is there a kind of left coast tourism impact, this kind of blue coast all the way from California and British Columbia? Is there a way for us to have an alliance in some way, or have a, for get the rest of the country to come here. No offense,
Yes, we want to be exclusive in this case.
no offense.
Don't go there. Yeah, one of the thought-provoking questions that Louise forwarded us to prepare for talking today is, has there ever been any thought in our individual markets of aligning ourselves to market to the LGBT market? And I can say no. I haven't since I've worked at this Spokane, but as soon as I saw that question, yep, I want to think about it now. That's, yeah, for sure. It just makes sense. But getting to Tom's point earlier, I don't want to be mercenary about it. It's not about identifying a high-spending demographic and getting them. It's, again, the bottom line is saying we're a wonderful place for everybody to come and visit. That is what, in the end, is going to win.
Question?
We have a question right back here. We've lost the wireless mic, so I'm going to ask that you speak.
You have to stand on a chair now.
Exactly.
No.
And perhaps if I could get Karen, you to repeat the question after.
Hey, Ross.
Hi Karen, how are you? So Roz from Air Nation. My question is related to the convention center. So it's a little bit of a story. What is the percentage of the convention center budget both for the build out and for its continuing operations allocated to GLBT?
So the question's about the percentage of the budget for the convention center build out and what's allocated to LGBT?
Yeah, and then also their continuing operations. I mean, are they obligated to themselves spend a certain amount?
A point of clarification. So Visit Seattle has a marketing agreement with the convention center, which is a public facilities district. So we really do the marketing, the national marketing, the national sales, more as importantly for the convention center. So the convention center, since 1988 here in Seattle, has been one of the most profitable centers in the country. It's small. That's why there is a second convention center under development right now. The convention center is almost totally cash profitable and has been almost every year. And so the bonds, the money generated by lodging tax really goes to capital improvements and for future development of the new convention center site. So the new center, just for those that don't know it, would be built a block away, not connected physically, would be about the same size and would cost about $1.6 billion, and would also be funded by the existing tax stream. So the convention center is pretty much profitable in the sense that it pays its debt, it has the lodging tax income stream, and we do the marketing for that convention center, but we also do the marketing and selling for many hundreds of hotel products around the region.
When they build the new one, how many gay contractors and other supporting services do they need? Like, do they need a gay on taco truck to be the construction workers?
No, it's a great question, and they have they cut a great diversity policy on suppliers, contractors, vendors, which I believe is on their website. There is a new website for the edition, the WSCC edition, and they've been very progressive in that and have been that way for years.
Right, I do want to add actually that we did meet with the convention center, the Roger and I, the PR firm that was working with them, and they did say they were going to include LGBT in their supply chain when they were looking for contractors. They're also looking at the retail space instead of the convention space, and they're looking at keeping that affordable so that more small businesses can actually be part of that retail. So it has a really small business diversity values focus in its second convention center that was built. So that's what I have heard. That's what they promised us. So that would be great to see if they actually brought that up.
And convention centers get kind of a bad rap. Just the reason we're doing the convention center is we turn away on average more business than we can book of groups that want to come to Seattle, but they just can't find dates to come. So there's really an economic reason to do it, and we think we can fill it.
So I think we have a question right down front.
I'm Felicity, and I'm the Seattle County Chamber of Commerce president this year. And I own a condominium since 1993. And I have been working with the firm for so many years. could see your self-video before at that time. So you're doing a great job. And then beginning for Taiwan newcomer here, and now the market is China. And my question is for you and the team, in the summer, it's so difficult to find a hotel, especially this couple years. The 5-star hotel go up to 500. And even a 3-star in Seattle area is almost 200. So it's very difficult to do business in Seattle area, even outside of the Seattle. So this is the question. I don't know how we're going to do this year. And the other one is, I think, because anybody comes in May and October, so if you will have any plan to promote the rainy winter season. So
Rainy?
the visitor comes the whole year long, or I should change all the tour plane to Spokane.
Yes. For those of you, what she was asking was how much you should all point people to Spokane. Yes, thank you, Tom. And next question?
Well, listen, it's a great point, and Seattle is busy, 82% occupancy for last year, one of the top occupancies in the West, just behind San Francisco. The good news maybe is 3,000 plus hotel rooms under construction in and around the city, and probably 4,000 in the region, east side, north, and south. And I think the feeling is that is, hopefully with the center, we will be able to fill most of those, but that will provide certainly some additional supply that's going to, I think, have an effect on pricing and or availability in certain parts of the area. So that's a good thing. But it's a good problem to have if you're a hotel operator, and it's a challenge if you're trying to entice the Taiwan or Chinese markets to come when we're busy. So,
Just point of fact, I mean, not to be glib about it, but we're nowhere near as expensive as Seattle and Whistler, which is one of the things we don't necessarily say. We're more affordable than them, but we do have to raise the flag. Better value, right? There you go. We do that with our golf courses. We do say we have some beautiful municipal courses. Spokane County, we talk about in Spokane. Right. Her question was if Visit Spokane represents just the city or what? Well, we technically represent Spokane County, but we represent the entire region. And we talk about our Golden Circle, which is about 300-mile radius around Spokane, going up again into Canada that I mentioned, and all the way over to the Cascades and up into Idaho and Missoula. So we market to a wide range for these folks who have a day trip, want to come over, but then we market beyond that.
and the train now runs to Spokane twice a week. Just kidding.
Yes, so Tim, I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
So apparently, when the zombie apocalypse happens, Spokane is going to play a very prominent role. My question to you is, how has Z Nation impacted economically Spokane? And the bigger question is, what can we do to encourage more of the film industry to look at our respective states?
Well, for those of you who don't know, there is a Sci-Fi Channel series that is shot in Spokane and has been for the last 3 seasons. It's called Z Nation. Originally, it was just about the United States being an post-apocalyptic territory and people running for their lives. This latest season they're shooting is actually set in Spokane. So it is a big deal in terms of local film crews and people who work in that industry. In terms of having a larger, wider economic impact, not yet, really. You remember the Twilight movies and how they impacted, what's the city up in? Forks, yeah. And there's been some talk about creating some sort of tour. They have one, I think, in Albuquerque now. They have the one in Savannah, I think, for another zombie show. So there's talk about maybe developing something like that for Z Nation, and hopefully they do. I think it would really play. But then the Washington Filmworks organization is itself in a fight for survival with the state legislature. Films are made based on tax credits, basically. Filmmakers, they always run on tight budget production studios, and they are looking for the best deal they can get to make the best product they can. And if somebody says in Vancouver, BC, come up here and basically we'll pay all of your crew wages, that's very enticing. Where the city of Seattle, or those of us in the state of Washington, we don't have that ability. We might not have that ability because Washington Filmworks tax incentives run out this year. So they are right now trying to get the legislature to re-up and again fund that incentive program.
And we probably lose most films to Vancouver, to BC. They do a great job up there.
We have most Netflix TV series filmed in Vancouver, just second, including Riverdale.
Another question?
Got a question. Terry from Las Vegas. Of course, we're a major tourist destination on a worldwide basis and host in a couple of years the International Air Traffic Conference for routing with the airline. Just as an aside, TPP is no longer Trans-Pacific Partnership. It's now Trump Petroleum Profiteering. If you haven't noticed your gas prices recently, I assume they're going up here like they did in Las Vegas. 57 cents, 23% in the last year. But to what extent do your respective organizations actually reach out to the airlines? I grew up in Spokane. I spent 15 years in the Seattle-Tacoma area, now 36 in Las Vegas. It really concerns me, the access, because you mentioned golf courses in Spokane. One of the things I promote to Las Vegas people and desert people is golf and great getaways, hot lakes in cool climates. I fly them to Medford, Eugene, the Tri-Cities, in Bellingham on our little homegrown Allegiant airline, Motel 6 in the sky. But you have great municipal golf courses, which are far more affordable. You have tee times at 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the afternoon that are less than 80 degrees in May, June, July, and August. Plus, also, I market people to come to the Northwest still, though I'm in Las Vegas, because I advertise the desert mountain states in the winter for the snowbirds, and I advertise and promote the cool mountains, for instance, the figure 8 of St. Helens, Snoqualmie, and the North Cascades. To what extent do you reach out to, Georgia was mentioned, people from the southeast that don't really have mountains to experience?
Well, I think the first part of your question was about the airlines, and I think Visit Seattle has a very close relationship with the Port of Seattle, and Tom, I'll let him speak on that. Visit Spokane, we've been very fortunate in the last couple of months to see some carriers expanding their service to Spokane. Direct flights added to Dallas, San Francisco, San Diego, O'Hare, and that's just been in the last 2 months. And these are things that we really try to tell the meetings and conventions folks, because one of the challenges even Seattle has, when folks play the Seahawks or they come up here to play the Mariners, the pro athletes complain a little bit because it's way up there in the upper left of the country. But so meeting planners themselves, they are concerned about what's called the airlift. And Spokane, we don't have nearly the great lift that Seattle does, but it's getting better for sure. And then for reaching out to specific states, we don't have any specific marketing that goes to specific states for leisure travelers. We do specifically target through the magic of Big Brother and Facebook ads and digital campaigns. We do target meeting planners in the Maryland, in the DC, and the Chicago area.
I would say for us, it's the airline relationship and with the port is one of our most important because it does all come down to access, seats coming in. We spend money to support new airline development. The port does a wonderful job of that, and I think recently SeaTac has just moved up to number 9 in the nation in terms of the ninth busiest airport, and that is good and bad. It's bad if you have to go through SeaTac. If you live here, it can be very tough. And that's changing in the next couple of years, but it's critical to us to attract international and more domestic flights. But we are running out of room, sadly, at SeaTac.
And the other thing that's coming up is high-speed rail connecting LA to Vancouver, which could be very, very exciting.
Incredible. And that's one thing our president has talked a lot about, and I wish he might have started with infrastructure rather than everything else that's been on the list the last 2 months. But infrastructure is a major issue for travel, for tourism, for business, and rail, lack of and/or high-speed rail would be incredible for us as a country.
And one more thing to keep in mind about 45 is he and his family own 11 hotels. He's a hotelier. And there is, when he talks with the umbrella trade organization for travel and tourism, it's called U.S. Travel. Roger Dow, who's in charge of it, I read Roger Dow has some positive things to say about the responses he has had from Trump, and I think there can be room for some optimism on travel and tourism down the road. Hit a couple of those bumps with the bans that have been precluded.
Another question?
I'm Dave Powell from the Desert Business Association Palm Springs, which we like having a quick back and forth between all the West Coast cities. What is your interactions with the other CVBs along either the West Coast or in the Western region? And I keep thinking that Louise is also my mentor, and I've been the executive director for 18 months, so I'm still the learning part. I have an okay at best relationship with our CVB, which is getting better, especially around LGBT issues, which is surprising since we had the NGLCC conference last August. But what is your relationships with them along the West Coast? And I think this is going to be opportunity over the next couple days as the LGBT chambers all meet to talk about partnering more. July, August isn't exactly the optimal time to be in Palm Springs. We should keep working more between the West Coast, whether it's crossing the border or not. So.
Yeah, we've got, I'll speak for myself. I've been in the DMO world for 11 years, and we've got deep and great relationships with all of our quasi-competitors and partners around the country. So from Vancouver down through San Diego, Scott White in Palm Springs, a delightful guy used to be here, actually was the director of sales at this hotel many years ago, back in the day. So the funny thing is, maybe unlike the chambers, and maybe not unlike the chambers, but we compete heavily for meetings, conventions, for certain parts of the business, but then we are the first to collaborate together to do things that make sense together to help each other. And maybe never more so than Vancouver, Portland, Seattle, Victoria, trying to figure out ways, how do we do a better job of selling the Cascadia region? And we haven't really pulled that one out of the bag yet, but we want to do that, and we want to do more of that together.
But I think we did collaborate pretty good in 2010 when we hosted the Olympics, where Seattle had a great marketing campaign and Victoria was able to capitalize on that whole experience, which was really great. So we have done it before.
And I would have to defer in answering your question to my boss, our CEO. But I do know she speaks in the same terms Tom does. The CEOs have their own little secret society. They have good relationships. We have good relationships with other CEOs.
So we have time for one last question.
It's not a question, it's a comment. Creating change is a huge organizing effort. It's been around for 30 years from the National Task Force. They have never come to Seattle. They go all over the country having this huge 3-day conference involving 2 or 3 people, 2 or 3,000 people. We need to sit here in this meeting and say, let's bring them to Seattle when the new convention center space is opening. It's very important. They train activists. If you think the problems in D.C. are going to go away anytime soon, I'd love to talk to you for 25 hours, because they're not. And so if you're training activists to go back to their communities and create change, then you want them to have the space and the beauty of our city, and we should deliberately sit here and say, let's bring them to Seattle. I've gone to it 6 times, I've presented at it, and for some reason, they've always seen Seattle as the corner of the country and very expensive. But I believe with the new convention center space and some determination and some corporate sponsorship, we can bring that meeting to Seattle in the next 3 or 4 years.
It's the cost of hotel rooms. It's the same reason they wouldn't go to Boston. And so they actually been to Portland, Oregon because of the cost of hotel rooms.
That's
and
why
so
we've been finding some subsidies. I'll spend $10,000.
So it's about thinking about that because they also come in February, which how was it all in February? Well, but people from the East Coast want to get the hell out of the snow and rain's not back here in February. So I think, there is an opportunity if Seattle or Spokane, if it goes that many people, be happy to connect people with creative change.
Nobody's ever been Seattle realistically. Excuse me, but I know that might be a problem, but some of us would subsidize hotels or do something to solve that problem. They need to come to Seattle. We need them to come to Seattle. Whatever the problems are, tremendous volunteer, tremendous amount of money to the gay community and other supporters. I'm not sure I'm concerned about the price of hotel rooms. Travel a bit, maybe we're $100 more for good hotels, but it's not exactly that big a gap. But I really think there would be a notable goal from this.
I will work with you on that, George. So
Yeah,
absolutely, I do want to let everybody know in 2018, we will have our people here. And they will be bringing 3,500 to 4,000 people here in 2018. And that came out of a great relationship with Visit Seattle, GSBA, and others. And so that was a great outcome. I also want to let you know we've had a LGBT travel and tourism advisory board. And that Tom is on that advisory board, Terrence is on that advisory board, and Amtrak, Alaska Airlines. So we actually do talk about all of these things. If we have great ideas, Rob is our chair for our task force, our travel with our LGBT staff. Let us know. We will work on this. We will reach out. There's a lot of factors to bring together. It's very competitive to get that convention center because we're very popular and we don't have a very large convention center and we're not quite there yet with enough hotel rooms, but we're getting there. So we are soon going to be able to compete in these other markets, whereas right now San Francisco, Texas brings in a huge amount in the size of their convention center and the number of their hotel rooms. So we will be getting there, and it is because of working together that's going to help us get there sooner. So I think that's a great suggestion. We can talk offline.
Jared, you actually have one final question. So this whole thing is about state tourism. So I wanted to kind of bring in something about safety tourism. How maybe we could provide more tourism to the state to be interested in less getting actually close to the conversation, less not hearing them. So I just want to think that there would be ways for us to collaborate with red states so that we can help increase the revenue that we're bringing in and increase their income so that they do feel that the economy, the stronger dollar, is really affecting them.
Great question. If I look at blue state, red state, it's kind of our eastern Washington, western Washington, the power of what a tourism office in the state could do for the entire state, red or blue. We do collaborate with colleagues in mostly not so much state level, but major cities. So if it's Denver, if it's Indianapolis, is a great partner of ours, a colleague. They are much bigger than ours, but we do things together. But I think it's an interesting thought. But I think we have a microcosm of that here in this state, just east and west, and I think we're working together pretty well.
I just I just want to add one thing to that. I think that's a great idea, but I think we also have to have our people be safe. So I just want to be very careful when we actually promote tourism, that the laws are inclusive, that our people can be who they are, that they don't have any anti-trans legislation that puts somebody's life at risk to travel to those states. So we bring this back to today when we talked about 1552, but I know that other states in this room have legislation that is about to roll back for civil rights. So if anybody wants our tourist dollars, including ours, safety is about immigration, but it's also about LGBT rights and our trans rights. We cannot let any legislation pass that puts people's lives at risk, because then it will affect us economically, but most of all, it affects our lives. And so I think it's really important, and the business was a leader in the state of Washington in stopping 1550, and now we're in the state of 1552. I don't know if California has anything right now that's up, any legislation that's up in California to roll back any rights, or any other states that we're facing.
Massachusetts.
So that's what we also have to do, besides maybe wanting to give good help in terms of economically red states, is making sure first every state recognizes people's humanity and rights to be safe under the law that it has equal access to everybody. So right now it is not allowed in 1552, because it's not only that you won't want to travel here, is that we will become a focus of a boycott. And so if you want to talk about more, that's all we need between a ban and a boycott. It will not be good for any of us. So equality is good business, because in the long run, it brings people together, and when they're together and they're safe, they spend money, and small businesses do well, and the states do well, and then they provide more services and support their nonprofits. So it's a great big circle of support when people are included.
And you have an authentic travel experience because you can be yourself.
Yes.
Well, then I heard just like, my question was more, so I'm from Iowa originally. Iowa has been blue for the last however many decades and a half, and this last election we went red. All the states around Iowa, except Minnesota, was red. Iowa has a lot of tourism that I might not know about, that's important. But how do we get the states to get more needed? When Iowa was the first legalized gay marriage, so like there is equality in Iowa where if you're red, people are still safe, still people there, not being hurt or harmed, and it was a very inclusive state. Like, tourism played a part in making that conclusion happen when that state is severely economically depressed, especially in the rural area. There are areas where ecotourism like eco art and giving these farmers that the dirt by the farm bill has or whatever, getting those together. I mean, maybe it's just a standard, not really.
Well, I'm betting that the state tourism office in Iowa is doing its darndest to promote the way, given what you're saying, and that the individual cities are too.
I mean, it's a good earlier the panel before us talked about reinventing business models, and we have to rethink. Some of those communities left behind have to rethink the business and economic drivers, and tourism is definitely an economic driver. You talk about the fear factors, globalization, I lose my job. If you think of the things that cannot be outsourced, it's high thought and high touch. And high touch is tourism. I'm talking about hospitality, hotels, restaurants, dining, tours. All of that is high touch that can never be outsourced. It's about coming into my town or my city and me showing you what our culture is. And those communities that have felt left behind, have to redo and rethink the economic drivers of their communities. I think tourism absolutely can be an economic driver. And culturally, it is the building the bridge, it is opening the doors, it's connecting communities. Culture that should also help build the divide. But to Louise's point, there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes too. I love Iowa. I went to grad school there, but there's a lot of things. Drake, so yeah, Des Moines, Bulldogs. But there's a lot of factors to do that. And we're probably out of time. I just want to say thank you to our panelists. Thank you for everyone for this conversation. I know that we keep talking during the reception. and we don't want to hold up people for happy hour, for cocktails. So, thank you.